Okay, so you send over a bunch of stuff about vendor managed inventory, VMI.
Yeah, VMI. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely seems like it. So basically, from what I'm gathering, it's like instead of me, the buyer, having to figure out how much toilet paper I need to order, the supplier takes care of that for me.
Exactly. So think about it like traditionally, you look at like your past sales.
Right.
And you try to predict how much you're going to need like next month.
Okay.
Place your orders, and then it's all on you to manage it. The storage, hoping you don't have too much or not enough. And your financials, they reflect all that inventory as soon as it hits your warehouse.
Right. So much forecasting and hoping you got it right, I guess.
Yeah.
So VMI flips that, right?
Yeah. So with VMI, the supplier, they can actually see what you're selling in real time. And they make sure you have enough.
Okay.
Sometimes even before you even think about placing a new order.
Wow. So it's kind of like, what? Like a mind-reading supply chain or something.
Kind of, yeah. Anticipatory, I guess.
Anticipatory. Right. Okay. Well, in this deep dive, let's really break down how VMI works, how it's different, and why people are saying it's such a big deal. And I guess especially for someone like me, I'm always running out of stuff. So if this could solve that,
oh yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Absolutely. So VMI, it really boils down to like a shift in who's responsible.
Okay.
So the supplier is the one using the data and seeing, which products are flying off the shelves and which ones are just sitting there. And they can react way faster than, waiting for a purchase order to come in.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I guess it does require a lot of trust.
It does.
You're basically letting the supplier peek behind the curtain and see all your sales data.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, you're not actually on the hook financially for all that inventory until it's, actually used. So if it's just sitting there in your warehouse, it's not on your books as an asset until it's either sold or used in production.
Okay.
So that's a big difference.
That's a huge difference. So less risk, better cash flow, potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so what else makes VMI so great? What are the specific advantages?
Well, from what we've been looking at, you've got improved accuracy. Because they're using real-time data, there's way less guessing.
Right. I'm terrible at guessing.
And that means fewer stockouts.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's the worst when you really need something and it's just not there.
Right. And then you're also looking at, optimized stock levels. They're not overstocking, they're not understocking. It's really fine-tuned.
Okay.
Which all leads to cost savings, right, for both sides. Less waste, lower holding costs for you. And the supplier, they can plan their production better. And, from what I've seen, companies can save 5, 10, 15% on their supply chain costs.
Wow, that's a lot. That's real money.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just about the dollars and cents. This kind of close relationship, it builds trust, stronger partnerships, smoother supply chain overall.
That's interesting. I mean, kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. If you're working that closely with someone,
right,
you're both going to be more invested in making it work.
Definitely. Okay, but these are all theoretical benefits.
Right.
What about some real-world examples? Are there companies actually doing this and seeing results?
Oh, tons. Walmart and Procter & Gamble, they were the pioneers way back in the 80s.
Really?
P&G, they basically took over managing Walmart's inventory of their products.
Okay. How did they even do that back then? Was the technology even there?
Well, they were using the data from Walmart's checkout scanners.
Oh, the POS data.
Exactly. They could see, real time, how many diapers or Tide bottles were being sold.
That's pretty amazing. So what happened? Did it work?
It worked incredibly well. Walmart cut their inventory by 10 to 15%. P&G sales jumped by 20%. Wow.
And both of them saved millions on logistics.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Real results.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Walmart, P&G... What else? Who else is doing this?
Well, over in the UK, you've got Tesco and Unilever.
Okay. Another big retailer, big supplier.
Right. Same kind of deal. Unilever managing Tesco's inventory.
So did Tesco see fewer stockouts?
Oh, yeah. 30% fewer.
That's massive. And happier customers, I bet.
Absolutely. And Unilever, their inventory turnover, it went up by 25%. Sales increased by 15%. So, it works across different markets.
Okay, so it works for retailers. But what about, tech companies?
Oh, yeah. Dell and Foxconn, that's a great example.
Okay, so that's components, motherboards, things like that.
Yeah. Foxconn basically manages all the key parts Dell needs for their computers.
And that must be, like, really complicated.
Oh, it is. But Dell, they cut their lead times in half, saved 20% on inventory costs, and way fewer production delays. That's huge. Cutting lead times by half, that's got to be, like, game-changing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what about Amazon? I mean, they're all about speed, so I have to imagine they're using VMI.
Oh, definitely. Lots of their suppliers manage their inventory right in Amazon's fulfillment centers.
Makes sense. So they can, like, get stuff to people super fast.
Exactly. That 1-day, 2-day shipping, it's all thanks to VMI, at least in part. They've seen, like, 30% better inventory turnover.
Wow.
And 25% fewer stockouts on, like, the really popular items.
So VMI is literally making customers happier.
It is.
Okay, one more example I wanted to ask about.
Yeah.
Harley-Davidson. How does, like, a motorcycle company use VMI?
So their suppliers, they keep track of what parts are needed on the production line, and they make sure those parts are there when they're needed. So no more waiting around for, like, a missing brake cable or something.
And production delays.
Exactly. They saw a 40% drop in those delays. Inventory costs down 15%.
Okay, so VMI is real. Companies are doing it. It works. But how do you actually get it going? Like, what are the steps?
Well, first and foremost, you got to have good data sharing.
Oh, yeah?
Real-time visibility. Suppliers need to see your inventory levels, your sales data, POS, even your forecasts.
Right.
You know, EDI is super helpful for that.
EDI, that's the electronic data interchange, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a common language for computer systems to talk to each other.
So it's got to be, like, seamless, the connections. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And then on top of that, you're going to need some pretty sophisticated tech.
Okay, like what?
ERP systems,
Yeah.
SCM systems, you know, to automate everything, the data exchange, the replenishment.
Right. So ERP is like, oh, that's the big system that does, like, everything, accounting, manufacturing.
Exactly.
And SCM is more about the supply chain itself.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the tech, right?
Right.
It sounds like it takes a real commitment from both sides.
Oh, totally. You got to have that collaborative planning. Buyer, supplier, working together, figuring out schedules, deliveries, all that. And then how do you know if it's working?
Right. How do you measure success?
You got to track the KPIs, key performance indicators.
Like what kinds of things?
Inventory turnover, stockout rates, order accuracy. You got to make sure everyone's on the same page, you know. Lots of training, open communication.
That's really interesting. So data tech, collaboration, measurement. Sounds like a lot to juggle.
It is, but it's worth it.
Okay, so what about the legal stuff? Contracts, agreements, what needs to be in there?
Well, you got to have those replenishment triggers.
Okay, so that's like when the supplier knows to send more stuff.
Exactly. And penalty clauses for things like late deliveries.
Makes sense. And then the payment terms, that's important too.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Typically with VMI, you only pay for what you actually use.
Okay, that makes sense. Less risk for me, the buyer. Okay, so big picture. VMI, it really does take a lot of the hassle out of inventory management, huh?
It does.
I mean, no more forecasting headaches, less paperwork, potentially fewer stockouts.
Fewer stockouts means happier customers, too.
It's a good point. So it's good for, like, Amazon, but it could be good for, like, any company, really.
Oh, absolutely. And it can even spark innovation. You know, when you're sharing data and working so closely, you can find new ways to do things.
That's cool. So it's not just about efficiency. It's about, like, working smarter overall.
Exactly. And it works across industries, retail, tech, manufacturing, you name it. If you need to manage inventory and you want a closer relationship with your supplier, VMI can be a good fit.
Okay, so to sum it all up, VMI, it's a pretty big shift. More collaboration, more data, but potentially huge benefits. Better accuracy, lower costs, smoother operations, happier customers.
It really is. And, you know, all these major companies are not using VMI just for fun. They're seeing real results.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I guess the big question is, if VMI is so great, what are the downsides? Like, what should companies be careful about?
That's a great question. Because it's not all sunshine and roses, you're sharing a lot of sensitive data. Systems need to be talking to each other perfectly. And everyone needs to be on the same page, or it can fall apart pretty quickly.
That makes sense. So even though there are a lot of potential upsides,
right,
companies need to be really thoughtful about whether VMI is right for them.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground today. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
Definitely a lot to think about. Thanks for, walking us through all of this.
My pleasure.
And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We'll catch you next time.